The Comanches paraded across the prairie, flushed with the knowledge that they had conducted the greatest raid in Numana history. Each measured gait brought them closer to Plum Creek, an unremarkable stream like many they had already crossed. Yet this one was different. Hidden enemies crouched under its banks. Soldiers of the Texas Republic watched their adversaries approach. Even Texians who were there that day could not agree on the exact number of the enemy. They were too many to count. During the morning of August 12, 1840, Texian soldiers viewed the approaching antagonist with both anxiety and admiration. One of them, Ranger Robert Hall, recalled,
"It was one of the prettiest sights I ever saw in my life. The warriors flourished their white shields, and the young chiefs galloped about the field with the long tails streaming from their hats and hundreds of varicolored ribbons floating in the air, exhibiting great bravado. Some of them dashed courageously very close to us, and 2 or 3 of them lost their lives in this foolhardy display of valor."
Regular Army General Felix Huston commanded the disparate Texian force of about 200 men. He elected to assume a defensive posture, stand his ground, and receive the Comanche attack. Comanche braves obliged, swarming forward to assail the Texian line, but just as quickly to dart away. Most of Huston's troopers remained dismounted, but about 30 mounted Rangers pursued the Indians and broke up their attack. One witness testified that they had performed personal heroism worthy of all praise. Even so, Rangers could not provide protection for the grounded regulars and militiamen, several of whom fell wounded. The mounts of the men on the firing line proved easy targets, and racing bowmen brought them down like tethered cattle. This one-sided skirmish lasted 30 minutes when Texas Ranger captains Ben McCullough, Edward Burleson, and Matthew Old Paint Caldwell implored Huston to allow the rest of the Texians to mount and countercharge. They explained that while their men remained on foot, the enemy was free to exploit his superior mobility. Still, Huston insisted on maintaining a defensive posture. Comanche arrows found their mark, but so too did Texian bullets. When a chief wearing a tremendous headdress fell to the accurate rifle fire, his mourning followers set up a peculiar howl. With their adversary's sudden demoralization, Ranger captains recognized an opportunity. Almost apoplectic with anger, Caldwell shouted into Huston's face, "Now, General, it's your time to charge them! They are whipped!" The sputtering Huston made no reply. Indecisiveness had unmanned him. Without waiting for orders, the captains directed their troops to mount and led them in a spirited rush. Astride their mustangs, they could match Comanche mobility and bring deadlier firepower to bear. In a sprawling gunfight, the official chain of command became less important than the proven leadership of each troop captain. Giving full vent to their frenzy, the Rangers charged, howling like wolves. The herd of captured horses, as many as 2,000 head, stampeded and raised dust so thick the parties could see each other but a short distance. Checked by their mass and encumbered with plunder, the Comanches could not maneuver. As Hall told it,
Our boys charged with a yell and did not fire until they got close to the enemy.
wielding single-shot flintlock pistols, it was vital that they made each round count. Cramped warriors were unable to break free from the throng. Rangers darted along the perimeter. Only then, where they could not miss, did they open fire. They brought down about 15 amid the press of warriors and ponies. Captain Caldwell had been right. The Comanches would not stand against a determined charge and close quarters firepower. General Huston reported.
The Indians scattered, mostly abandoning their horses and taking to the thickets.
A running 15-mile pursuit ensued as Rangers chased fleeing Indians as far as the Balcones escarpment. Once there, the surviving tribesmen reached the hilly region of the Edwards Plateau and vanished into the Texas Hill Country. Toward sundown, Ranger detachments returned to the site of the initial engagement near Plum Creek and found the rest of the Texian army sifting through the discarded Comanche loot. These included items of almost every description: bags of silver, bolts of fabric, kegs of liquor, cases of books, full suits of clothing, pouches of tobacco. Even a number of live baby alligators that warriors stashed in saddlebags to convince folks back in the Comanche Raid that they had raided all the way to the coast. Hall recollected.
We hardly knew what to do with all this stuff, and we finally concluded to divide it among ourselves.
As the Comanches broke and fled, they killed many of their captives. Among the hostages was the youthful widow of Linville Customs Officer Major Hugh Oran Watts. Juliet Constance Ewing Watts had been married only 21 days before she witnessed her husband's murder and found herself a prisoner. As was their custom, Comanche braves attempted to rape the young woman, but were unable to decipher the intricacies of her whalebone corset. Finally, they gave up and left her virtue intact. When Mrs. Watts had become an encumbrance, a warrior fired an arrow into her torso. But the same corset that had earlier preserved her modesty now saved her life. The projectile careened off a bone stay, inflicting a painful but not a mortal flesh wound. The clash at Plum Creek transformed a Comanche triumph into a bitter defeat. Avarice proved their undoing. Texian soldiers could never have intercepted them had warriors not been driving a vast herd of captured livestock. White veterans swore that they had killed at least 80 tribesmen, but produced only 12 enemy bodies. One should recall, however, that the Numana carried their dead off the field for ritual burial. The lords of the South Plains continued their attacks against isolated homesteads, but never again did they attack in such large numbers or penetrate so far into areas of Texas settlement. General Huston dispatched a fulsome post-battle report to President Lamar. He claimed victory, but those present on August 12th knew how little he had done to achieve it. Indeed, if the Ranger captains had not taken tactical command, Buffalo Hump's warriors would have likely annihilated the entire Texian force a little at a time. The general's military prospects dimmed following the Plum Creek fight. Too many veterans had witnessed his meltdown for it to remain a secret. He became a laughingstock, and his pride would not abide it. During the autumn of 1840, he resigned his Texas Army commission and became a partner in a New Orleans law firm. But Texas was never far from his thoughts. 4 years later, he was a staunch advocate of annexation. He remained a rebel in search of a cause. In 1851, for example, he addressed a New Orleans assembly where he espoused Cuba's independence from Spain. As the states grew further apart, he emerged as a fire-eating secessionist. A civil war might have fulfilled his martial ambitions, but he never found out. In 1857, he passed away in Natchez, Mississippi. General Felix Huston died as he had lived, a flouncing dilettante out of his depth. Texian officials were about to deal with another flouncing dilettante, this time of the French variety.